if I can jump in, I totally agree. And that's for us as sort of a software company that produces, we produce for the film industry, right? Our goal is to help companies be more successful. So our background was of people that are experts in AI from NASA and myself. I was an independent producer and I spent in finance, so I know what the finance industry uses in terms of decision support systems, and I know what was lacking in film. But then we also have people that work in studios and were producers. So when we started to build the system, we built it based on our experience, and then we asked companies. But now with our clients, we continuously build out. So what do you guys need? How can we help you? This is our technology. This is how it's evolving. AI is evolving, right? So now we just closed the deal with Fandango. Fandango is working with us with their data exclusively, and we're building models around, the Rotten Tomato scores to help understand, because it's become such an important curation metric for streaming or theatrical. So it's constantly evolving. It's not like this is just AI is a beautiful thing to crunch numbers. And when applied in the right way, it can be a beautiful thing like Waze that helps you guide it. It helps guide people in the film industry. It does make decisions, as Andreas said. We want to build a great Waze. We have a great Waze. We know it works. We have studio clients with Warner Brothers and other studios, and independent clients like Ingenious and others, and we get positive feedback, and we want to build this out. So this is kind of the Waze that we wanted to build to get you to the destination you need to go faster and safer. And we can take into account traffic that as a human, I know how I get from Los Angeles to the Angeles Forest, but do I know how the traffic is? Should I take the highway or the land? I don't know. Waze can tell me these are the 3 routes. The traffic's heavy here. There's not. That's what AI is. It can help you navigate the best way to get there. Might save you time or money. And therefore, this is kind of where we sit, and we constantly. It's a very much evolving process continuously.
And I think to finish on that concept, that I think risk mitigation for us is obviously a key keyword, because in making all these decisions and in using these tools, the technology can really help putting all those decisions within a context that through the technology is mitigated, is validated really by not just someone's opinion within the exec team, but by using data that's been analyzed by the technology itself. And then, so risk mitigation is a really key component in this kind of decision-making process that is made so much more effective through the AI. And I think from an investor's point of view, ourselves, but also the investors through the investing in Genius and other financiers, knowing that there is that technology assisting the decision-making process, I think is really key.
Yeah, and Tobias, you talked about the 2 use cases, one in the investment side, the others, you talked about your studio clients. There's been a lot of questions right now from the audience. Is this something that's affordable for independent producers, independent filmmakers? Is this useful or affordable for them? Or is it mainly more of an enterprise or portfolio management tool?
No, it's not. This is really for everyone. Of course, it's a user-based system. So for studios, we have a certain number of users, but we are now also working on smaller packages, and we are customizable. So we very much take it user by user to see whether we can accustom to single companies. We're not there that we can provide something extremely cost-effective like MDB or anything. Because that's not who we are. It's highly complex technology. It was developed at NASA, and of course we have to make it a business as well. But we are definitely in a place where it works for the indie industry as well as studio industry, and we are working on models to make it as affordable as possible to also smaller players, because they can benefit the most. For studios, they use data analytics. They can just use their systems to do it faster, and as Andreas said, iterative, right? You can, hey, let's take that actor out, put this actor in, and change release strategy. It takes you 5 seconds to recalculate rather than 5 hours. So that's there. For the independent, there is a lack of understanding often, or in independent, how to do a proper analysis, because most people can't afford an analyst or are not trained in that sphere. And so here we help actually with that value out of, them being able to run pseudo-level analysis for an indie project.
So I hope that answers the question. And if the audience members have any, they have specific use cases, I'm sure they can contact you directly after this.
On the website, please reach out for a demo, and then we get in touch with you and talk to you specifically about how we can make something happen.
Perfect. So I want to switch the conversation and start by asking you, Nadira. The key to, as AI practitioners know, the key is having good data. So can you share maybe some of your approaches towards data collection? Are you looking at public data or proprietary data or a combination of both? And how do you ensure that data as well as your models are validated? Muted.
My turn. When it comes to data collection, I mean, when we started out, we needed scripts. I remember approaching a few distributors, sales agents, and 5 years ago, data wasn't the new currency, because data today is the new currency. Everybody is talking about data, and everybody is actually, being very protective of their data. But 5 years ago, they were still slightly naive in the sense that when we approached them and we told them what we needed, when it comes to scripts, we needed PDFs and all of that, they were very helpful. So I remember, for example, a certain distributor actually shared their Dropbox with us. And that Dropbox had about 7,000 titles of movies that in various stages, like from early development up to released films or pre-release. It was a combination really for us, because our data set consists out of 30,000 scripts. So it's a combination of getting the scripts from distributors, production companies, sales agents, but also scraping from the internet. Anything that's available has been scraped by our team for sure. When it comes to IMDb or, for example, NPS scores, which is the European version of cinema scores, we collaborated with a large cinema chain, and they shared with us their cinema scores, the NPS scores, which allowed us again to use it. So it's really a combination of getting everything from companies, but also combined with scraping. Yeah.
Great. And Tobias, any particular approaches for data collection and validation that you'd like to share?
We very early on, we knew that data is key, so we license data. We pay a lot of money for our data sets from the leading providers. It's a huge cost for us, but we thought it's absolutely key to have the best data in order to train our models. And also, of course, then we developed our own data sets and have some proprietary data sets. For example, one that we can monitor global OTT data, which is, of course, has been very helpful now in the pandemic when a lot of it went digital. We could monitor how certain pre-pandemic content worked out, or library content, or whether all the new releases, which were not massive studio hits, but mostly streaming title or indie film that went to streamers, performed in the marketplace. All that kind of data that's useful. We either license or we built it ourselves. But we have very rigorous data quality approval processes that this data has to go through, because it's key.
But the other interesting aspect for me of the AI here, because obviously data is key, and that's why arguably larger companies like Ingenious have an advantage of newcomer into the investment side of things, because we have all our historic data that we can use, as well as external data set that we can analyze. But I think what the AI can do, especially looking at platforms that don't necessarily want to share their data, they would never share their data, is to use it to predict other patterns that somehow can predict the data that you're after. So you create alternatives ways to analyze those data that they are not directly available to you, but through the technology you can identify those patterns that very, very often do help inform the decision. Again, together with other tools, it's never going to replace entirely, obviously what we do. But I think that is something that only the technology can really do.
So that's a fair point, because there's now, all these walled gardens, right? Like you cannot really access or get any insight into Netflix's data, and that's kind of what you might consider their advantage over certain others, right? So that's an interesting approach, whether you try and infer or even predict. And there's been different platforms out there that are trying to aggregate, including smart TVs and others that are trying to provide some of that access.
We found,
yeah, exactly. You're looking at piracy. You're looking at any other index that somehow can help the decision-making process. And I think simply maybe because it's a lack of time or resources, we can't spend all the time analyzing that. But through AI, that information is made very easy. And is it gonna really make our decision on investing in a film at the other? Probably not, but it's another way to analyze it. And again, it goes back to risk mitigation. It goes back to have all the available tools when you make a decision, because it's so easy to get it wrong. But at least you feel like you are being given the best chance to make it right.
I want to move a hot topic. So nowadays, bias in AI is a key thing on every. And it's kind of, this is a general question to everybody. Is that something you think about in your work, or does it affect your work? And if so, what are some ways that you handle bias in the training data or in your models?
So in the end, our models reflect past performance and past viewing of content, and then of course project also in the future. Because when we do make projections, we have different tools. But the predictive tool, for example, when you do projections, that's the advantage to using comps, because people in the industry use comps right now, and use like 5-6 comps, which is highly subjective. You can't choose 5 films and think that your films be the same. But if you use something like AI, which is a prototyping system, you look at past performance as well, which there might be some bias in there in data, but then you project in the future. And it's always the last couple of years that you use. So what we saw is, I get the question a lot, and it's like, does it mean when you use AI that it's only going to be Marvel films now, or that kind of blockbuster thing? And I said, that's exactly what it's not going to be, because the recent data, especially the ones that heavily used in our models, because we only look at most of the last 3 years, it has a very high skew also to diverse audiences, which is great. So there is not much of a bias there, but also a system like ours actually provides a framework, because a lot of times people resort to IP-based content when they don't have a risk framework, right? You're not going to put 100 million on the line without any risk framework. And running 5 comms and sitting around the table often doesn't cut it. And so what it is, it's then you look at what IP, book, comic book, whatever the superhero is out there that ensures me that there's an audience. So this is what happened in the last 5 years. So all these kind of blockbuster, IP-based, prequels, sequels, and so on, they're not the reason that happened not with the AI. That happened because there was no risk framework, and so they went for that strategy. With AI, or with like technology like ours, you can actually prototype content, meaning you have a framework now for original content. You have a framework to running an African American drama or whatever it will be, and understand how this can perform, and you can finance accordingly based on that framework. And Our numbers are very as accurate as you can be in this industry. I think there's no, and the thing is, this provides people actually the reason to take greater risks because they have a framework to analyze it by. You're not going to take any risks if you don't have a framework, because then you're just gambling, and most gamblers lose money, right? And so if you have a framework, then you can use it for original content, and therefore the bias is not, we didn't see it as a big, coming back to your question, we didn't see it as a big thing because the recent data is very diverse, and of course we have to look into what people generally like in order to predict the future. But yeah, we have certain trending algorithms that are part of the predictive and part of our predictive tools that take care of some of it. But yeah, we don't see a big issue there right now.
You know, I'm kind of jumping ahead and peeling a question from the Q&A session. Do you think this is, you know, we'll start noticing a trend as filmmakers approach, you know, investors or studios? Do you think that there'll be a trend data, especially from, you know, tools like Synalytics, like ahead of time to support their projects?
I hope so, because that's the way to get a project done. I mean, just think of it. If you have, you're an investor, so whoever puts money on the line, and if somebody comes and tells you a great story, you have to trust the person quite a lot to put money on the line based on that. Somebody comes with a great story and has some facts that can prove that this can also work in the market, and some convincing facts that are really based on let's say, I mean, we use industry-leading analytics, then that should help convince people. So of course, I think I hope, and the charter showed before with Sundance that huge, you know, disparity between like 3 billion content produced, the market is 100 million. Maybe some films shouldn't be made, maybe some films should be made a bit different, but it definitely gives you, as Andreas said, a chance to be to get it right, and hopefully get your film made at the right price and convince investors based on facts.
I think
do you
also
see the same, Nadira?